Hi everyone, thank you for tuning in. So in this week's episode, we will go through rocket launches, we'll talk about Asteroid Bennu and his sample return to Earth, Ariane 6 updates, inflatable space habitat tested by Sierra Space, Starbase activities of course, James Webb Space Telescope discovers CO2 on Europa, and MS-23 returns from the ISS, and we finish with ESA commissioning Euclid Space Telescope.
September 24th, 2023, SpaceX launched 22 Starlink V2 mini satellites called Group 618 on board of his Falcon 9 Block 5 from his usual Space Launch Complex 4T at Cape Canaveral Space Force Station in Florida. Now, those satellites were positioned at 530 kilometers altitude in a circular low Earth orbit, as usual. Now, that particular booster landed 643 kilometers downrange on the drone ship. Just read the instructions. Now, this was the 17th flight and successful landing of the Falcon 9 booster. Now, this isn't even not the first one. This is the second 17th flight of a Falcon 9 booster. An amazing achievement. By the way, originally the Falcon 9 booster was designed to refly only 10 times, but with the experience gain, SpaceX has worked what needed to be done to requalify it for 20 flights. And additionally, SpaceX has had that time round reflown 200 boosters. So that is an achievement. So well done, SpaceX, on that one. September 25th, SpaceX successfully launched 21 Starlink V2 mini satellites called Group 7-3 from Vandenberg Space Force Base, Pad 4E in California. Now, that was on board of a Falcon 9, and that particular booster has landed on the drone ship, of course I Still Love You, for a 6th time and landed in the Pacific Ocean.
On the 26th of September, China Aerospace Science and Technology Corporation launched a Long March 4C from its Yongquan Satellite Launch Center in China. On board was a remote sensing satellite Yogan 3304. On the 27th of September, the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Aerospace Force launched its Quased SLV rocket from its Shahrud missile tests site in Iran and successfully placed its satellite Noor 3 into circular low Earth orbit at 450 km altitude. This was the third reconnaissance and spectrum monitoring satellite launched so far. 2 years ago, NASA sent a satellite called OSIRIS, Origin, Spectral Interpretation, Resource Identification and Security, to return samples from Asteroid Bennu and study surface composition of asteroid Apophis. Now, the 24th of September, NASA's OSIRIS-REx spacecraft, so the REx bit means Regolith Explorer, made a final course correction ahead to close past the Earth. So the spacecraft returning from Asteroid Bennu has successfully dropped off samples it retrieved back there before zooming on past Earth for his next mission, which is to visit Apophis by 2029. So for that mission, his name will change to OSIRIS-APEx, standing for OSIRIS-Apophis Explorer, and the spacecraft will spend 18 months in his vicinity studying the 350-meter asteroid and coming close enough to use his thrusters to brush away surface rock and expose subsurface material for analyzing its composition. But let's go back to OSIRIS-REx. The sample vessel has parachuted itself back to Earth, landing within the Department of Defense Utah Test and Training Range, southwest of Salt Lake City.
Sierra Space has been testing its flexible skin habitat to drive down significantly the cost of operating on orbit with this live habitat. Previously, Sierra Space has successfully tested the small-scale specimen. However, the specimen tested in this footage contained a metallic window, or more accurately, a mock-up of a window with a blanking plate. According to Sierra Space, this latest successful milestone is validating the concept and is moving forward with full-scale testing of life by the end of this year. They say that the milestone cements the company's position as the industry leader in commercial space station development for use in low Earth orbit and deep space. So this type of habitat is offering many advantages since it offers more space to astronauts without the need to having a larger or wider rocket to place such habitats in orbit. So if you remember, Sierra Space teamed up with Blue Origin and other companies to build a commercial space station called Orbital Reef, expected to be in operation in 2030. In a previous episode of Espace News, I informed you about the recent static fire tests of both the booster and the second stage of an Ariane 6, which appear to have been quite successful. However, Joseph Ashbacher, ESA managing director, provided this week an Ariane 6 task force update. Now, he said that great data and results from the hot fire September tests for Ariane 6, both in French Guiana and in Germany. However, an anomaly was detected in the thrust control vector hydraulics when preparing for the next tests. The long-duration hot firing test will no longer take place on the 3rd of October as teams investigate the causes. We will come back to you with more updates whenever available. Now, for the recent viewers, Ariane 6 is the upgraded version of Ariane 5, designed to be 44% cheaper than Ariane 5, and with a slightly higher payload, up to 12 tons to geostationary transfer orbit, or 20 tons metric tons to low Earth orbit. In contrast, SpaceX Falcon Heavy can carry 27 tons to geostationary transfer orbit and 64 tons in low Earth orbit. I'm only giving you just for comparison, that's all, nothing more than that. Looking at the payload weight evolution of Ariane 5, it is likely that Ariane 6 payload weight will increase over time towards competing with SpaceX Super Heavy. Time will tell. Euclid's visible instrument, also known as VIS, will image the sky in the visible light, so wavelengths between 550 and 900 nanometer, to take sharp images of billions of galaxies and measure their shapes. So this image we're looking at were taken during commissioning of Euclid's to check that the focused VIS instrument worked as expected according to ESA. So we can see spirals, elliptical galaxies, nearby and distant stars, star clusters, and much more. So Euclid's near-infrared spectrometer and photometer, also known as NISP instrument, is dedicated to measuring the amount of light that galaxies emit at each wavelength. So it will image the sky in infrared light, so in between 9 and 2000 nanometer of wavelength, to measure the brightness and intensity of light. So this image now we're looking at was taken again during the commissioning of Euclid to check that the focused instrument worked as expected according to ESA. At Starbase in Boca Chica, Texas, SpaceX has been pressure testing the prototype S-26.1 to destruction at his Macy site. The specimen was filled with liquid nitrogen, which is why you see this white smoke spreading, caused by the liquid nitrogen evaporating. Now, the hot stage ring was then removed from booster 9. As you know, the flight test is not expected to be until October this year. This may allow SpaceX to check a few things to do with the booster or the hot ring and so forth. Then the hot ring was put back again, along with the Ship 25. The SpaceX Star Factory is continuing its expansion, as you could see on the footage. This week, ESA showed a set of images from the James Webb Space Telescope about Europa, one of Jupiter's moons. This graphic shows a map of Europa's surface taken by the near-infrared camera on the left, and compositional maps derived from the near-infrared spectrograph's integral field unit data in the following 3 panels. So I think that at that very moment some of you wonder, what am I on about? Well, to explain it in the simplest terms, this equipment allows visualizing hundreds of items at a time, not based on what the naked eyes would see, but something we cannot. Below the red color, called here infrared, similar like your TV remote control, where you cannot see the remote control signal during the operation. So the rest of the jargon means that the equipment is made smaller. So in the compositional maps, the white pixels correspond to carbon dioxide in the large-scale region of disrupted chaos terrain known as Terra Regio, you would see on the center and on the right. So the discovery suggests a potential habitable environment in the salty subsurface ocean of Europa. So compared to last week's episode about K2-18b, which was 120 light years away from us, which is basically 1.14 quadrillion kilometers, Europa is only 0.00007 light years, which is 628 million kilometers from us. So Europa is relatively close to us. I would not be surprised if we see space missions to Europa launched within the next 2 decades. The last item of the space news this week is the return of MS-22 trio from the ISS. If you remember, the 2 Roscosmos cosmonauts Sergei Prokopyev, Dmitry Petelin, and the NASA astronaut Frank Rubio was supposed to return to Earth 6 months ago, but due to an issue on the MS-22 capsule, Roscosmos has sent an empty MS-23 capsule instead. But this meant that the MS-22 crew would have to stay nearly 1 year, or 371 days, in the ISS. So Frank Rubio effectively became the first American astronaut to stay in orbit for 1 year. Of course, the record of number of days in space belonged to cosmonaut Valery Polyakov, with 437 days in space in the mid-90s. So the ISS commander Sergei Prokopyev passed the lead to the ISS to ESA astronaut Andrea Mogensen. The MS-23 capsule carrying the MS-22 crew has landed on the 27th of September softly in the Kazakh steppe in Kazakhstan. Let us now stay in the stars. I did not want to leave this episode without showing you this stunning picture. The James Webb Space Telescope released an image of the supersonic outflow of gas and plasma coming from the poles of a star so young it hasn't even reached its adult size yet. The jets are streaming from the poles of protostars, Herbig Haro 211, flung into interstellar space by the violent forces of a new star's birth. Turbulence in the plumes of gas and plasma excites the molecules within, heating them up until they glow. Different colors signal different molecules, such as molecule of hydrogen, silicon oxide, and carbon monoxide. Thank you for watching this week's episode, and please come back next week for more space news and technologies for my lovely audience. I'm Christophe Paget. Have a great week. See you soon.